let's talk about what nobody is talking about. Let's talk about weight loss over 50 and why it's so damn hard. So hello, for those of you who are new to this page, for those of you who are new to my, free Facebook group, if you're watching from in there, I'm Laura. I'm a mom of two. I'm a holistic nutritionist, and I am the founder of the Lavish Method, where I teach women who just want to lose weight a simple way of eating that doesn't involve giving up wine or chocolate. It's realistic, and it's all about how food works. Maybe you're experiencing this at 43, maybe you're experiencing this at 61, maybe it's 67, maybe it's 70, but at some point you do start to see this happening, or most women do. So there's 3 things I want to focus on tonight, 3 things that I'm assuming are not things you've likely spent a lot of time on or that you've heard a lot about. And these 3 things I think are game changers, you guys. If we can look at these 3 things when it comes to eating for weight loss after 50, then it really does help us figure out how we should approach food and how we can best start to see results. So let's get going. No more, stalling. Let's get right into thing number 1. So thing number 1 is that your metabolism is different after 50. As you get older, you basically tend to burn less calories every single day doing the same things that you've always done. And there's a couple of different reasons for this. One of the biggest reasons is that as we age naturally, and this can happen, gradually, and this can be minor or this can be major, but lean muscle, so the lean muscles in your body start to be converted into fat, which basically means we have less muscle as we get older and we have more fat. And that's really, really important because muscle is metabolically active tissue. What that means is that your muscles, as I'm just sitting here talking to you guys, not working super hard, all of the muscles in my body are metabolically active, meaning just hanging out doing really nothing, they are burning calories, which is a huge deal. And burning calories is what drives metabolism, right? The more calories we're burning, doing the same things every day, the higher our metabolic rate is. And so if you have less muscle on your body burning those calories every single day, and you have more fat, and fat is what we call metabolically inactive. It's basically like dead tissue. Fat just hangs out. It's not burning calories. It's not, doing anything active on your body. It's like a storage locker, right? It's a storage locker for energy that you can use later. So if that lean muscle that's metabolically active, that's burning calories, if that is being replaced by fat slowly over the years as we age, then you can see how your metabolic rate would start to decline, right? It starts going down. And so another reason your metabolism tends to go down as you age is frequent dieting. And this is a big one because for a lot of you watching this, you probably were in your diet heyday in the 70s and the 80s and the low cal, low fat, world of dieting that was so prevalent then. And basically what that does, what eating less and exercising more, what not bringing in enough calories does over time is it lowers your metabolic rate. And so over time, yo-yo dieting and, cutting calories and then cutting calories again and then going back and cutting calories again, that frequent yo-yo dieting past actually ends up doing some serious harm to your metabolism and your metabolic rate. By the time you're in your 50s, by the time you're in your 60s, if you've spent the last couple of decades dieting and cutting calories, and not eating enough fat and doing all of these things, then very likely your metabolism has been damaged and your metabolism is a lot lower, than it once was, which again means you're burning less calories. It means you're storing more fat. And so what we have to do when we talk about weight loss for women over 50 is we have to make sure we are spiking the metabolic rate as much as possible. We have to make sure we're stimulating metabolism as much as we possibly can. Right? That's huge. That is one of the main things we need to do when we're talking weight loss in women who are, over that 50 mark, is really use foods that are going to spike metabolism, focus on movement that is going to really spike metabolism, and work on preserving that lean muscle, right? And so one of the worst things we can do as we age, as we hit that 50 and 60 and so on mark, is cutting calories, because cutting calories is going to lower that metabolic rate even more, and you're going to end up in a place where you can't possibly lower your metabolic rate anymore. You're going to end up in a place where your body is holding on to as much stored fat as it can because it thinks it's starving, and you're going to have a really hard time getting back out of that slump. So number one, understand that your metabolism has been lowered and work with that, okay? Second reason, inflammation, and specifically chronic inflammation. Inflammation basically is a reaction to an injury or an illness. And what that means is when something gets injured, or when you have a virus or you get sick, inflammation is basically a rush of like resource-rich fluid that goes to an area and that basically helps to bathe it in the things that it needs to make it better. So something happens, inflammation comes into the rescue, it helps to heal that tissue, get rid of that virus, whatever it may be, and then inflammation goes away. That's the process of acute inflammation, and that's important. We need that to live. But chronic inflammation is a process of inflammation being turned on, right? But not being turned off again because whatever's going on doesn't end. So a lot of times there's a lot of foods in our diet. There's a lot of things, that we've been eating over the years that when you're 20 and when you're 30, it's not a big deal, right? It's mildly inflammatory. And so what that means is it's causing irritation within maybe the digestive tract. And as you continue to eat that way and you continue to eat that way, the inflammation tends to get worse, and it builds up and it gets worse, and it makes your system even more reactive. And this is really important because inflammation in and of itself, so I'm not even going to talk about the secondary effects, of what happens when you eat, when you are inflamed, but in and of itself, inflammation has a couple of things about it that, are really bad when it comes to weight loss. The first thing is that inflammation has been shown, chronic inflammation has been shown to make leptin less effective. Leptin is the hormone that makes you feel full, right? It's your quote unquote full hormone. So if leptin is less effective, then basically what that means is that you're very, very likely to overeat. The other thing is that fat cells themselves become little inflammation factories, meaning they actually exacerbate the inflammatory process and create more inflammation. And so what you end up with is this, it's like a vicious cycle of inflammation, right? And then, leptin being depressed, which is that hormone that makes you feel full, and you're more likely to overeat. And then you're more likely to obviously store fat because you're probably not eating the right things if you're this inflamed to begin with. And then, you store more fat, and so on and so forth. And it's an awful vicious cycle. So inflammation is a big deal from that point of view. And then on the other side of it, by the time we hit 45, 50, 55, 60, anywhere in there, and this chronic inflammation from foods that we may not be tolerant to that we've been eating for a long time, they start to manifest themselves in issues within the gut. And so what happens, there's a couple of different things that happen. So the first thing that can happen is your gut lining becomes damaged. And so you're not digesting your food as well as you should be. And so number one, you're not getting all of the nutrients that you need out of your food, which puts you into this desert, this nutritional desert where you're getting enough calories in a day, right? You're eating enough, maybe in this case, you're getting enough, but because your body's not digesting your food properly, you're not getting all of the nutrients that your body needs from the food. And so in this case, some of those cues to continue eating keep happening because your body's kind of starving. Even though it's in a calorie overload, it's starving for nutrients. So that's not a good thing. The other thing is you start to become, you start to have digestive issues, right? So you start to get bloating, right? And being bloated makes you look like you're 10 to 15 pounds heavier. It makes you feel swollen and gross. You know that feeling you can't do your jeans up. And a lot of women over 50 struggle, with bloating and with acid reflux and with gas and, with diarrhea or constipation, like all of these things stem from a reactive digestive system, which usually breaks down to inflammation that's just been ongoing, you know, throughout the last 2 decades, 3 decades. So one of the big things we have to do, and this is so important for women who are over 50, is really address that inflammation. And we're going to really need to focus on, you know, quieting that inflammation, working on, you know, restoring that gut lining and getting your digestive system back on track. Because when that comes back on track, then it's so much easier to lose weight. That's a big deal. I think if I can give you a basic understanding of some of these things that are underlying this resistant weight loss, then my hope is that you'll realize that it's not hopeless, right? It's not that, you know, it's not that you just can't lose weight. It's not that you're just menopausal and that's that. It's that there's these specific things happening that we need to address first or during. And while we address these things, then, you know, you're going to see a lot more success. The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is a big one. This is probably, you know, for 70% of the clients that I see, this is definitely a factor in, you know, age-related resistant weight loss, and it is cortisol. So cortisol, otherwise known as your stress hormone, is a really big deal when it comes to weight loss, and it's a really big deal for women over 50. So, you know, we all know that stress makes us fat, right? Like that's a thing. We know it's true. We say I'm fat because I'm stressed, and the reason for that is cortisol. Like cortisol is the hormone that's secreted when we get stressed out, and it basically, we're not going to get super sciencey and technical, but basically it results in excess belly fat storage. Like cortisol is the hormone that's putting all of the fat onto your belly. Like that's what it does. And so cortisol is also what we call one of the aging hormones. Like cortisol ages us. It really does. And interestingly enough, when we don't know why, we don't know if it's reactive or causative, but after 50, your cortisol levels, like your just regular old resting cortisol levels, increase by about 20% after the age of 50. And this is a really big deal because this, in and of itself, is one of the main reasons why we have such a hard time with belly fat, you know, as we age after that age of 50 is this cortisol. And so cortisol it's actually closely related to insulin resistance, and insulin is kind of your fat storage hormone. And we're not going to get, you know, all into that tonight, but for an overview, insulin is your fat storage hormone. And so what happens is when we get into a situation where we're insulin resistant, what that means is the cells actually stop listening to insulin in the same way. And so your body has to pump out more and more. And so as there's more insulin floating around in your body, you're much more likely to store food as fat. So, you know, as our cortisol levels go up as we age, our cells also, just like in insulin resistance, our cells also become resistant to cortisol in the same type of way. You know, a lot of women, when they hit that, you know, 45, 47, 50, 52, whatever mark, they feel tired but wired at night. Tired but wired feeling is very specifically tied into cortisol. And a lot of times what it's a result of is that, you know, you have this excess cortisol in your system that's pumping you up, that's giving you energy, but your cells are becoming resistant to it, which means they're not taking it up, right? So if you are feeling tired and wired, if that is a thing for you regularly, then that is a very clear sign that cortisol is probably one of your big underlying issues when it comes to resistant weight loss. Like it's like a blinking like red light, like cortisol is an issue, that tired but wired feeling. So I really want you to, you know, really do a check with yourself at night. If you have a hard time going to sleep, if you have a hard time like chilling out at night, then cortisol is probably a problem. And this is also a big deal when it comes to sleep, because it means, and again, we know that it's such a hallmark issue for women as we age, when we hit that, again, 50s, 55, 60 mark is that we have a hard time sleeping. We have a hard time, maybe falling asleep, or maybe we fall asleep but we wake up throughout the night, or maybe we wake up really early and we can't get back to sleep, and there's this sleep dysregulation. And again, that your cortisol kind of plays into that. And we also know that non-good quality sleep, that's not the right way to say it, but we're going with that, non-good quality sleep also leads to excess fat storage. So it's this vicious cycle, that comes down to this increase in cortisol. The cool thing is, when we look at all of these kind of three things, when we look at cortisol, when we look at inflammation, when we look at metabolism, there are specific things we can do. There is a specific way of eating, right? Like, there are specific foods we can choose that are going to help to rev the metabolism, right? There are specific foods that are going to help to lower inflammation, and targeted supplements as well. And when it comes to cortisol, there are specific foods we can eat that keep our blood sugar balanced and lower insulin expression that way. The key thing, and this is what I want to just drive home over and over and over again, is that if you are having a hard time losing weight, and if it's age related, and I say 50 is like kind of it's a good jumping off point, but you could be 45, you could be 47, you could be 60. It's not going to be the exact same for everybody. But if you're having a hard time losing weight, it's not going to be enough to just eat less and exercise more. That may have worked in your 20s. It's still not a good strategy in your 20s, but your body is more able to, just roll with the punches then. And so now you're paying for all the things that your body rolled with the punches for, 20 years ago. And now we have to go about it, and we really have to get smart, and we have to look at these issues that are underneath the surface.